La sintesi dell'intervento di Sua Eminenza Rodriguez Maradiaga e poi quella del professor Sachs mi porta a riflettere che ci sia una realtà di economia la quale senza etica distrugge l'uomo e l'ambiente. Sto facendo una sintesi e sarò molto breve. Qual è la possibilità reale di uscirne? La politica? Sì, se i politici non fossero dominati dall'economia. Sì, se i politici fossero, come diceva Platone, filosofi, ma non è così. E abbiamo uno scontro oggi, uno scontro fra i poveri e i ricchi che non pensano più, i poveri che forse spinti dalla necessità pensano. A me preoccupa soprattutto la situazione del mondo giovanile nell'Occidente, che nel benessere è molto appiattito, e quella dei giovani invece che dalla povertà sono molto stimolati. E allora una sintesi a priori, per dirla con Kant, fra la Centesimus Annus e la Laudato Si, non è forse in un impegno globale per tornare a educare? Insegnanti di tutto il mondo, unitevi. Grazie.
There are other questions? Please.
I want to thank everybody for very interesting talks, especially your very lucid presentation today. The one question I want to ask is, do we really want to think about it as an immoral economic logic versus that we want to try to cap or channel by a moral logic? Or is it maybe not more fruitful to say there's competing moralities? I gave up my PhD, well, I didn't give it up. I had a PhD in economics from Harvard. I traded it in for a PhD in theology from Notre Dame, in large part because it seemed to me that when I was teaching economics to my students, I was teaching them a moral theory. It was just a bad one. It was one that said that the way you find your human fulfillment is by trying to maximize your utility, maximize your profits, maximize. By returning to the study of theology with Aquinas and Aristotle, you find a different understanding of human happiness that I think provides a morality that's the kind that Professor Sachs was talking about, that would restrain our economic logic and channel it towards the human good. So anyway, I just want to say, it seems to me that it's a competing morality. My students are very attracted to the idea of trying to make as much money as they can. They actually
Please, put the question. Not conference,
sorry,
question.
Sorry, would it be helpful to think about it in that way?
Are there other questions? Okay. Microphone, please.
Thank you. The place of democracy in all this situation, because we see what is happening in many countries, and it's not clear that through democracy we will go efficiently in terms of the warming problem, and how to do it is, in my view, essential to discuss. If not, we will end up accepting dictatorships if they are efficient in some respects. And therefore, we should ask about the kind of democracy, for instance, to progress in this respect.
Do you want?
Let me take up briefly these 2 points. I think it's true, certainly, that in one guise, the libertarian approach aims at a moral view which puts liberty above all other social values. But I think that it is beyond that, actually, because the problem we have is not only this radical individualism and failing to understand the common good, it is the rampant anti-sociality that's involved. There is direct criminality that is massive. There is direct cheating on others that's massive. There is direct pollution of the environment that is destructive. So I would highlight the antisocial aspects, meaning that not only is an individual out for personal gain, but out for personal gain not by creating social value, but by extracting from others. And that, I think, is the most pernicious aspect of this. Excessive individualism is, I believe, a moral error on Aristotelian and other grounds. But I think that the anti-sociality is even a bigger crime, because the idea there is you don't ask yourself, am I out for myself by creating value, or am I out for myself by denying others, by polluting their environment, by stealing their money? And we now live in a system where the most powerful do not make that distinction. When the banks cheat, they're not saying we're important for the financial system. They're saying our counterpart should understand, of course we're bankers, we're cheaters. This is a different matter. So I think that's what I call the Faustian bargain. You go into it saying self-interest, but you end up absolutely antisocial, aggressive, destructive, not merely out for yourself, but out to destroy. And there, I think we have lost that language even. I see it, especially, I see it because I live a couple miles from Wall Street, and it's real phenomenon, and it's very dangerous. Well, democracy question is related to that, because there are two kinds of democracy that we see in practice. There are well-functioning democracies that are very powerful. The Swiss cantons, for example, very high trust and participation of individuals, very low corruption levels, very active engagement. The same is true in the Scandinavian democracies. You look at, do you trust the government? It's 90%. It's incredible. What is the difference of the democracy in the United States? This election cycle, there will be perhaps $10 billion of money contributions paying for the politicians. This is a politics of money. It's not a politics of human inputs. And this also, I should just add, is not just a mood, it's rigorous political scientific research, which has found, and I refer you to a recent book called Affluence and Influence that came out of Princeton. The authors did something fascinating. They looked at about 1,000 public policy issues, looked at the opinion polls of who supported the positions on those issues, then looked at the political outcome of the United States, U.S. politics. The answer was the only views that mattered were the views of the top 10% of the income distribution. There was no weight in the outcomes of the views of the bottom 9 deciles. So this is rigorously shown. We are a politics of the elite, because the public opinion does not matter right now. And there's a mechanical explanation for it. You want to get on TV, you want your advertisements, and you have your hand out to the Koch brothers, to Wall Street, to the arms contractors, to anybody that will give you the money for that. That's the drama of democracy when the Supreme Court says that companies can anonymously give as much as they want to candidates. That is what happened in our country. That's also the Faustian bargain. We lived with the libertarian philosophy so long, that the Supreme Court could not even make the difference of free speech and corruption of politics. That's what happened to the U.S.
Okay. There are other questions. You go to the professor. I want to make a comment on what Professor has told us. There's two important points that attract my attention. One is that moral economy works, is possible in Scandinavian. And the second is functional democracy work in cantons of Switzerland. I agree with you on those modular achievements. But I'm rather skeptical whether the same can be applied to establish a global moral governance. Because in all those cases, we are dealing with a context that is very different from that of the global. They are homogeneous, small entities with unique social, political culture, etc. And in those examples, we're dealing with society of close relationships, of more or less known members of the polity. But when we are dealing with the global context, is a society of the strangers. Given the size, the scale of the problem, how can we achieve moral persuasion? I'm afraid that the wonderful concept of global moral governance is too much a top-down approach, whereas perhaps we can think of an alternative or bottom-up, starting from our labor community first, and then moving up the national, the regional, and the global, since all politics is regional, is global when it's come to implementation. Thank you.
I'm reminded of one of the first philosophers that asked the question about the global scale of this, and that is Immanuel Kant in 1794, I believe, in his essay Perpetual Peace. And his idea was that one could have global peace if each part of the world was governed locally, like Swiss cantons, I suppose, or his home of Königsberg, or by local republics, because he talked about republican government. But I think he meant government, and he said, in which the princes would not be able to take their citizens to war. And then a community globally of local governance could apply. And I think that this calls to mind several issues. One is the Church's correct and important doctrine of subsidiarity, which is that if we can have government at the lowest possible level where it can be effective, this, I believe, can help our cause because it makes local democracy more achievable and empowers local people. So I think that there is a very practical set of issues around implementing the subsidiarity concepts. The second, on the moral governance, I would say two things. One is that there is an optimistic view, which I subscribe to, I have to say, which is that there is a shared moral view for most of humanity and across all the major religions. And that's why when Pope Francis speaks, he's speaking to the whole world, and he's resonating with the whole world, because it's resonating with a common moral view. I personally do not believe that the major fundamental differences that divide humanity are really so much differences between most human beings, but are really the problems of the most powerful, who are able to manipulate systems, finance, armies, and so forth. So I think that there are practical considerations. This is one of the reasons why I am a very big believer in one major top-down effort, but it was both top-down and bottom-up. And that was to spend 3 years globally to try to find shared goals, which became the Sustainable Development Goals. Millions of people participated in local deliberations, and the UN General Assembly, 193 governments, spent 3 years discussing the goals. And the work of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, as President Archer said, played a very important role in those discussions. So now we have them. I believe that this is something that can be used to help move forward a very difficult, challenging problem. I don't deny the challenge. I'm not meaning to be glib about it. But I think we have some places to hold on to find a foothold on this.